The alarm went off this morning and you didn't get up. Not the first time it rang. Maybe not the third. You reached out in the dark, silenced it, and promised yourself 5 more minutes. And those 5 minutes became 20. And when you finally put your feet on the floor, you were no longer the man who went to bed with a plan. You were someone else. Someone already chasing his own day from the very first minute. And that's fine, you tell yourself. It was just an alarm. But it wasn't just an alarm. And somewhere underneath, you know that. Because there is a list. Maybe it's written on paper somewhere on your desk. Maybe it lives in an app on your phone. Maybe it exists only in your head, circling. And on that list are things you pushed off yesterday, and the day before, and last week. There's a phone call you need to make, a document you need to finish, a workout you swore you'd start, a project you've carried so long it doesn't feel like a project anymore. It feels like a silent accusation that lives in the house with you. And the strangest part is that none of it is hard. Not really hard. If someone held a gun to your head, you would finish in 2 hours what you've been avoiding for 2 months. You know how. You have the ability. You're not stupid, you're not incompetent. You're not less capable than the people you watch doing exactly the thing you don't do. So why doesn't it happen? That's the question that brought you here tonight. And I have to tell you, right at the start, that the answer you've been using is wrong. The answer you've been using is, I'm lazy. Or worse, that's just who I am. I don't have discipline. I start things and never finish them. I'm the kind of person who quits. You turned a behavior into an identity. And the moment you did that, you signed your own sentence. Because behavior can be changed. Identity gets defended. So let's delete that right now, before anything else. You are not lazy. You are losing a war against someone who wears your face. There is, inside you, a second self. He isn't a monster. He doesn't hate you. He actually believes he's protecting you. His only function, the one thing he has been trained his entire life to do, is keep you comfortable. Keep you away from pain, from effort, from the risk of trying and failing. He's the voice that says, today isn't a good day. That tomorrow you'll start with more energy. That you should research a little more before you act. That you've earned some rest because the week was heavy. That on Monday, on the 1st of the month, next year, everything will be different. He never shouts, he whispers, and he always sounds reasonable. That's why you lose. You're not losing to an obvious enemy. You're losing to a version of yourself that speaks in your voice, uses your logic, and knows exactly which arguments work on you. He knows you're tired. He knows you're anxious. He knows you're afraid of doing it wrong. And he uses all of it every single day to keep you precisely where you are. The Stoics knew this adversary. Not by that name, but they knew him far too well. There was a man named Marcus Aurelius. He was the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the known world. No door was closed to him. No one gave him orders. He owed no explanation to anyone. And still, in some freezing military camp on the banks of the Danube, with an empire at war on his back, this man picked up a notebook to write a reminder to himself. And what he wrote, at the opening of the 5th book of what we now call the Meditations, was something close to this. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, hold this thought ready. I am rising to do the work of a human being. Am I going to complain about going to do what I was born for, what I was brought into the world to do? Or was I made for this, to lie under the blankets and keep myself warm? Sit with that image for a second. The Emperor of Rome, alone, in the dark, having to talk himself out of bed. He wasn't immune. He didn't wake up with a soundtrack playing and an overwhelming urge to conquer the world. He woke up exactly the way you wake up, heavy, cold, his body asking for 5 more minutes and his mind inventing elegant reasons to give in. The difference between you and him isn't in the wanting. It's in what he did when the wanting never came. And there's a second man you need to meet tonight. His name was Epictetus. He was born a slave. He was another man's property. He had a crippled leg, probably broken by an owner's violence. He had nothing. no freedom, no whole body, no money, no name. And it was this man, with absolutely nothing, who became the hardest teacher in all of Stoic philosophy. In one of the texts his students preserved, he asks a question that travels 2,000 years and lands here, tonight, inside your room. How long are you going to wait before you demand the best of yourself? You are no longer a boy, but a full-grown man. What teacher are you still waiting for, that you keep handing off the job of fixing you? What day is it that you're waiting for? What day is it that you're waiting for? He asked that of students who had been sitting in front of him for years, taking notes, nodding along, finding it all very beautiful, and going home exactly the same. He was exhausted by people who understood philosophy and never lived it, people who knew the road and never walked it. And if I'm being honest with you, and honesty is the only thing that makes sense at 11 at night, there's a real chance you're doing that right now. You've watched videos like this one before. You've read the summaries. You felt that good chill that comes when someone finally says out loud the thing you've been feeling, and then you close the app and nothing changed. Tonight isn't about understanding. It's about running out of excuses. Because I'm going to hand you 8 disciplines. H, not 300. 8 concrete things the Stoics used to kill delay before delay killed their lives. These aren't productivity hacks. This isn't a timer with a tomato on it. It's something older and more brutal than that. It's a way of rebuilding the relationship between you and discomfort. Because underneath everything, that's what this is. Every act of procrastination on earth is the same act. A human being running from a bad feeling in the short term and paying for that escape with his own life in the long term. And before we get to the first discipline, I need to take apart the biggest lie there is about this subject. The lie goes like this: that disciplined people feel like doing it. That there's a certain kind of person, probably with better genes, a better childhood, a better brain, who wakes up full of energy and simply does the thing, and that you, unfortunately, weren't built that way. That's false. And it's a comfortable lie, because it takes you out of a defendant's chair. The disciplined person doesn't feel more motivation than you do. He feels the exact same drag, the same weight, the same little voice offering 5 more minutes. The only difference, the only one, is that he stopped treating desire as a requirement for action. He unhooked the tool. He acts, and the wanting shows up later, if it shows up at all. Most of the time it doesn't, and he does it anyway. That's discipline. It isn't feeling. It's doing regardless of feeling. And discipline, the way the Stoics understood it, has nothing to do with punishment. It's not a drill sergeant screaming in your face. It's not self-hatred dressed up as a routine. The word they used, ascesis, is the root of ascetic, and it meant training, exercise. The same thing an athlete does with the body, they did with character. You don't hate your body when you train it. You train it because you decided what you want it to become. Discipline is the highest form of self-respect. It's you, today, taking care of you 5 years from now. It's the only thing a person can actually do for his future self. So breathe. Lower the lights. If you're lying down, stay lying down. If you're driving, drive. Tonight we're going to go get back what's been sitting still. 8 disciplines, 1 war, and an adversary who wears your face, and who, starting tonight, you're going to recognize every single time he opens his mouth. Let's start with the first battlefield of the day, and it's no accident that it happens before you're even fully awake. Discipline 1, the discipline of dawn. There's something strange about mornings that almost nobody notices. Morning isn't just the start of the day. Morning is the moment you decide, without realizing it, who is going to command the next 16 hours, you or him. Think about how it actually works. The alarm goes off. In that exact instant, there's a tiny window, maybe a second and a half, where you're still clean. You woke up. The order was already given, last night, by the lucid version of you who set that alarm for a reason. In that first second and a half, there's no debate. There's only the fact. It's time to get up. And then the debate begins. And the moment the debate begins, you've already lost, because he is a better negotiator than you. He always has been. He'll remind you that you went to bed late. He'll remind you that it's cold. He'll remind you that you can make it up later, that it doesn't matter, that nobody's watching. And every one of those arguments is true. That's the problem. He never lies. He just uses small truths to make you betray a large one. Marcus Aurelius knew that negotiation intimately. And what he did was brilliant in its simplicity. He refused to argue about how he felt. He changed the question. He didn't ask, "Do I feel like getting up?" He asked, "What do I exist for?" And the answer he gave himself was this: "I get up to do the work of a human being." The plants do their work. The bees do theirs. The birds, the ants, the spiders, every single thing in this world wakes and fulfills its own nature without complaining, without postponing, without asking for 5 more minutes. And I, who was made to think, to work, to care for my people, to build something, am I going to lie here keeping myself warm as if that were what I was made for? He did motivate himself. He shamed himself. Gently. There's a difference. Notice that he wasn't writing that for anyone else. That notebook was never meant to be published. That was a man having a private conversation with himself at 5 in the morning, in a military camp, in a Central European winter, probably ill, probably exhausted, probably wanting to let the whole thing burn. He wasn't a marble statue. He was a tired man who needed an argument. So he built one. Now the practical part, because philosophy without practice is entertainment. The Stoics understood something about action that modern neuroscience only confirmed 2,000 years later. Resistance is higher before movement than during movement. The weight is in the launch, not in the run. Which means the longer you lie there, the stronger he gets. Every second you spend in bed debating whether to get up is not a neutral second. It's a second he's using to gather troops. So the rule is simple, and it isn't up for negotiation. When the alarm goes off, you move your body before you consult your mind. You sit up. That's it. You don't have to decide your entire day from a horizontal position. You don't have to swear you'll be productive. You sit up and put both feet on the cold floor. That's the act. That's the entire battlefield reduced to one movement. Because once your feet touch the floor, the conversation changes. You're not deciding whether to get up anymore. You're already up, and the adversary, who is powerful at preventing a start, is surprisingly weak at reversing what has already started. Marcus Aurelius had the argument. You need the argument and the movement. And there's one more thing about mornings I need to tell you, because it's worth more than any technique. What you do in your first waking hour isn't only what you do in your first waking hour, it's a declaration. It's the first piece of information you give yourself about who you are today. If the first thing you do is give in, you've just informed yourself that today you're someone who gives in. And the rest of the day will stay consistent with that. You'll push lunch, push the workout, push the hard conversation, and by night you'll look back and say today just wasn't a good day. It's not that it wasn't a good day. You signed a contract at 6 in the morning and spent the rest of the day honoring its terms. But if the first thing you do is carry out an order you gave yourself, even a small one, even if it's just getting up when you said you'd get up, you enter the day holding a piece of evidence. Small evidence, but evidence. I'm someone who does what he agreed to do with himself. And that's what discipline is made of. Not motivation. A growing pile of evidence. There's no such thing as self-esteem built out of talk. There is only self-esteem built out of track record. You don't trust people who promise. You trust people who deliver. And that applies to the longest relationship of your life, which is the one you have with yourself. Winning the morning doesn't win the day. But losing the morning almost always loses the day. And after 1,000 lost mornings, it usually costs something much larger than a day. Discipline 2. The discipline of the inner deadline. I want you to do something with me right now, just in your head. Think of one thing you've been putting off for more than a year. Not just anything. That thing. The one that showed up in your mind just now, along with a slight tightening in your chest. the conversation you never had, the appointment you never made, the resume you never updated, the debt you never faced, the book you never wrote, the gym, the course, the apology. Now answer honestly, brutally, what have you been waiting for? There's no good answer, is there? There never is. The real answer, once you stop running from it, is always some version of, I was waiting for it to get easier. I was waiting for a better season of my life. I was waiting to feel ready. And this is exactly where Epictetus presses his finger into the wound. He says, how long will you keep putting off thinking yourself worthy of the best? You are not a child anymore. You are an adult. What other teacher are you waiting for so you can hand him the job of repairing you? What day are you waiting for? And then comes the part that hurts most, the part almost nobody quotes. You are no longer a boy. If you are careless now, if you keep delaying, setting one date after another, marking days after which you will finally attend to yourself, you will not notice that you are making no progress, and you will go on being an ordinary man, living and dying as one. An ordinary man. Living and dying as one. That isn't an insult. It's a diagnosis. He's describing with clinical coldness what happens to most people. They don't decide to be mediocre. They postpone the decision not to be every day until the sum of the postponements becomes a biography. Nobody gives up on their own potential in a single dramatic moment. There is no day you quit. There are 4,000 days you said tomorrow. And here's the cruelest thing about procrastination, the thing nobody tells you. It charges you nothing today. If it charged you today, you wouldn't do it. If every time you postponed something you felt an immediate physical pain, your life would be sorted out in a week. But that's not how it works. Today you feel nothing. Today you actually feel better, because the tension of facing it lifted and you bought yourself a peaceful afternoon. The bill comes later. It always comes later. And it comes with interest. Because the price of procrastination isn't lost time. That would be the cheap price. The real price has 3 layers, and I want you to look at all 3. The first layer is the result that never came. The body you didn't build. The money you didn't save. The skill you didn't develop. That's the obvious one, and it's the least important. The second layer is the drain. You think putting it off is resting, but putting it off is the most exhausting thing there is. An unfinished task never leaves your head. It sits there, open, running in the background, burning energy every single day. You don't pay once for the thing you didn't do. You pay a little every day in the form of that low, formless dread you call anxiety, which actually has a name and an address. Doing a hard thing costs 2 hours. Not doing it costs 2 months of weight on your back. The third layer is the worst, and it's the one nobody fully recovers from: the erosion of self-trust. Every time you promise and don't deliver, you lose a little credit with yourself. And eventually, there comes a point, and maybe you're already at that point, where you make a promise and even you don't believe it. You say, Monday I'm starting, and you hear your own voice without a shred of conviction in it. It's like a friend who has stood you up 30 times. By the 31st, you don't even get angry anymore. You just stop counting on him. That's the real damage. You became a person who no longer counts on himself. So how do you get out? Not by doing everything. That's the trap you've fallen into many times before. Trying to repair 6 months of delay in one furious Sunday, burning out, and coming away even more convinced that you're incapable. You get out with one thing, and Epictetus was surgical about it. Pick the day. He talks about setting a date and behaving like the man you've decided to be. Not tomorrow in the abstract, because abstract tomorrows don't exist. A date, a chime, one thing. The smallest possible version of the thing you're avoiding, with an hour attached and no room to negotiate. If you've been avoiding the gym for a year, the commitment isn't training 5 times a week. The commitment is, Tuesday, 7 p.m., I walk through that door. Just walk in. If you've been avoiding the doctor, the commitment isn't fixing your health. It's, Wednesday, 9 a.m. I make the call. The call takes 3 minutes. You've been avoiding 3 minutes for a year. Because what's blocking you was never the task. It's the monstrous size the task has taken on in your head after being avoided for so long. Avoided things grow in the dark. That's why when you finally do it, the feeling is almost always, that was it? That was it? It was always just that. The monster was made of your avoidance, not of the thing. And there's a question I want to leave with you before we move on to the third discipline. A question the Stoics would ask with no gentleness at all. If you continue exactly as you are today, without getting any worse, just maintaining this same pattern of delay, where will you be in 5 years? That isn't a motivational question. It's a math question. Because a life isn't a straight line of infinite possibility. It's a sum. And the sum of your average days is precisely your life. What day are you waiting for? Disciplining 3. The disciplining of voluntary discomfort. Now we reach the root of the whole thing. And I need you to pay special attention here, because the other 7 disciplines get dramatically easier once this one is in your body. All procrastination is flight from discomfort. All of it. No exceptions. It doesn't matter what the task is. You're not running from the work. You're running from the sensation of doing the work. Not from the phone call, but from the drop in your stomach as you dial. Not from the gym, but from the weight of leaving a warm couch for a cold locker room. Which means you don't have an organization problem. You have a low tolerance for discomfort. And that changes everything, because tolerance is trainable. You're strong in plenty of ways. You can work while sick. You can swallow an insult. You've survived hard years. Nobody who made it to your age is fragile. But there are specific discomforts, small and domestic ones, that you never trained for. And those are exactly the ones eating your life. Seneca knew this. And Seneca, it's worth remembering, was an extremely wealthy man, one of the richest in Rome. He wasn't talking about poverty like someone who never had anything. He talked about it like a man who had everything and understood that having everything softens you. In one of the letters he wrote to his friend Lucilius, the 18th, he gives advice that sounds insane by the standards of any era. He says something like this: set aside a few days, just a few, in which you will content yourself with the scantiest and cheapest food, with the roughest and coarsest clothing, and then ask yourself, is this the thing I was so afraid of? He called it practicing poverty, and the goal wasn't suffering. Seneca was no masochist. The goal was one thing only: to strip fear of its power to negotiate with you, because that's how fear operates. It stands in the corner of the room, large and vague, telling you that if you lose the job, it's over, that if you go hungry, you won't survive, that if you lose that one thing, everything collapses, and as long as it stays vague, it keeps its power. The day you experience a small, controlled version of what you fear, the fear shrinks. You look at it and say, I've been here. It isn't the end of the world. I survived the rehearsal. And then you stop being manageable by fear. And a man who can't be managed by fear is a free man. Bring that into today. Voluntary discomfort is choosing, on purpose, with no need whatsoever, to feel something unpleasant, small and short, every day. The cold shower is the obvious example, which is exactly why it became an internet joke, but the principle is real. There's nothing magical about cold water. What's valuable is the structure of the situation. You're in the shower, your hand is on the handle, nobody's forcing you. Absolutely nothing bad happens if you skip it, and you turn it anyway. Your entire body says no, and you do it. You just rehearse the exact movement your life demands of you every day, acting against the body's vote on an order given by reason. That's the muscle, not the code. Obedience to yourself. And there are 100 versions of it. Finishing the set when you want to stop. Eating without salt for a day. Walking instead of ordering a ride. Spending an evening with no screens at all, just you and the silence, which for a lot of people is the hardest discomfort on the list. Sleeping on the floor one night. Going a whole day with no music, no podcast, nothing, filling the empty space. Notice something. None of that solves a single practical problem in your life. And that's precisely why it works. You're not doing it for utility. You're doing it to prove to yourself that you hold the command. Because look at what happened to our generation. And I need to say this clearly. We built, for the first time in history, a life in which it's possible to never feel anything unpleasant. You're hot, there's air conditioning. You're hungry, there's delivery in 20 minutes. You're bored, there's a 30-second video. You're sad, there's a series. There's silence, there are headphones. Every microscopic discomfort has a button that turns it off immediately. And the result wasn't happiness. The result was a generation that can't withstand anything, that feels anxiety spike at the smallest friction, that can't read 3 pages in a row, that can't sit at a red light without reaching for a phone. Comfort isn't the prize at the end of life. In excess, it's a leash. It promises you rest and charges you your capacity to act. And the adversary who wears your face loves comfort. It's his currency. It's what he pays you with every time you postpone. That warm, immediate relief of not doing. Voluntary discomfort is how you stop accepting that currency. Seneca said no man should be shocked when the blow lands, if he has rehearsed the blow beforehand. And there's no greater blow in a man's life than discovering, too late, that he was domesticated without ever noticing. Do one hard thing a day. Just one. On purpose. Something that serves no purpose at all. And watch, week after week, the strange thing that starts happening. The tasks you used to avoid begin to look smaller. Not because they changed, because your discomfort threshold moved, and what used to feel unbearable now just feels annoying. Discipline 4. The discipline of imperfect action. There's a kind of procrastinator who believes he's the opposite of a procrastinator. He isn't lazy. On the contrary, he works constantly. He studies the subject. He researches. He buys the course. He builds the spreadsheet. He organizes the folder. He maps the timeline. He does absolutely everything except the thing. Maybe that's you. And if it is, this discipline is yours. Marcus Aurelius had a line for it. A dry one, almost impatient, from a man who was rarely impatient. He wrote, in the 10th book, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Stop arguing. Be one." He was tired, and you can feel it in the text, of a kind of person who was common in Rome and who has multiplied infinitely since, the expert in the theory of his own life, the person who can explain better than anyone how change works and who never changes, because perfectionism, and I want you to hear this carefully, is laziness in a suit. It's the same flight from discomfort, only dressed as a virtue. You're not waiting until you're good enough. You're avoiding the moment the thing leaves your head, where it's perfect, and enters the world where it can be judged, criticized, compared, and found average. While the project lives in your head, it's a masterpiece. The instant you execute it, it becomes just an okay thing made by a limited human being with visible flaws, and that hurts. And the adversary knows it hurts, which is why he never tells you don't do it. He says, "Not yet. You're not ready. Study a little more." Wait for the right moment. The right moment is a superstition. Think about a sculptor. The raw block in front of him doesn't have a statue hidden inside, no matter how much we like that image. It becomes a statue by being struck. And the first strikes are crude, ugly, and look nothing like the result. No sculptor in history started with the details of the face. Every one of them started by removing large pieces of stone that were obviously in the way. Your first version needs to be bad. That's its job. And here's the practical part, which is simpler than you think. You don't need to do the thing. You need to start the thing badly. If you need to write one bad paragraph, genuinely bad, on purpose. Give yourself permission to write the worst sentence ever written. If you need to train, do the wrong workout, short and incomplete. If you need to have a hard conversation, open with a clumsy sentence. A clumsy sentence spoken is infinitely better than a perfect sentence rehearsed for 3 weeks inside your head. Because there's a law nobody gets around. Clarity comes after action, never before it. You think you need to know the path before taking the first step. It's the reverse. The first step is what lights the second one. Nobody in the history of the world has ever had the entire map before leaving the house. Not the great generals, not the great builders, not the people you admire. They just got used to walking with half the information. And there's something else I need to say, and this one is for your ego, with affection. The quality you're so busy protecting, the quality that keeps you from publishing, from showing, from delivering, isn't quality. It's fear in costume. Because real quality only exists on the far side of dozens of bad attempts. The person whose work you admire didn't get it right the first time. You're comparing your rough draft to everyone else's finished product. It's a game you lost before you started, and it's the most cowardly game there is because it lets you feel discerning while doing nothing. There's a very precise Stoic idea here. You don't control the outcome, you control the action. A trained archer controls his stance, his arm, his breath, the moment he releases. He doesn't control the wind. If he makes his action conditional on a guarantee of hitting, he will never shoot. And then he'll die without ever having shot, with an immaculate bow and not one arrow in the air. How many arrows are you holding? How many projects, ideas, conversations, changes are sitting in your quiver, waiting on a perfect wind that never arrives? Lose one this week. Crooked. Too early. Before you're ready. And it isn't so the arrow lands. It's so you remember you know how to shoot. Discipline 5. The discipline of the essential. There's a form of procrastination that's almost invisible because it disguises itself as hard work. The busy person. He gets up early, answers messages all day, solves everyone else's problems, sits in meetings, puts out fires, runs from one thing to the next, and gets home destroyed. And if you ask him what important thing he did today, he can't answer. He did a great deal. None of it was the thing. Being busy is not producing. Motion is not progress. You can spend 10 years exhausted and never move an inch. And that's one of the saddest ways to waste a life, because you don't even get the relief of having rested. Marcus Aurelius wrote a line about this that I consider one of the most useful in all of ancient philosophy. He says, if you seek tranquility, do less. Or, in the fuller version, do what's essential, what the reason of a social being requires, in the way it requires. This brings the tranquility that comes from doing few things and doing them well. And then he adds the practical instruction, the sharpest part. Most of what we say and do is not necessary. Eliminate it and you have more time and less disturbance. So at every action, ask yourself, is this necessary? Is this necessary? 4 words that, used honestly, reorganize your entire week. Because here's the truth nobody wants to face. You're not short on time. You're short on hierarchy. Everyone has the same 24 hours. And that sentence is irritating precisely because it's true. The problem was never the quantity. It's that on your list, everything weighs the same. Answering an unimportant message occupies the same mental space as the decision that changes your decade. And since the brain always prefers what's easy, the small eats the large, every day, silently. And here's the sinister part. Small tasks feel good. Each one gives you that satisfying line through the list, that sense of duty done, that feeling of productivity. You end the day tired with an apparently clean conscience, and the thing that mattered is exactly where it was yesterday. The adversary loves this. It's his smartest play. He doesn't need to keep you in bed all day, which would be too obvious, and you'd fight back. He only needs to keep you busy with second-tier things. That way you never face the first-tier one. And you even get a perfect excuse. I tried, but the day got away from me. So let's prune. The gardener knows something most people don't. A plant that is never pruned doesn't get bigger, it gets weaker. The energy spreads across too many branches and no fruit ever ripens properly. The cut isn't violence against the plant. The cut is what makes fruit possible. Your life is asking to be pruned. And pruning hurts because every pruning is a voluntary loss. Take a sheet of paper. Not tonight, you're resting. Tomorrow. And write down everything that occupies your week. Everything, including the invisible things. The scrolling, the group chat eating your attention, the commitment you accepted out of politeness, the project you keep alive only because you're embarrassed to admit it died. And then run every line through Marcus Aurelius' question. Is this necessary? Most of it will fail that exam. That's fine. You don't have to cut everything. Cut 3 things, just 3, and watch the space that opens. And then comes the second half, the more important one. With the space open, you name your thing. 1 thing per quarter of your life, not 5. 1. What's the one thing that, if it moves in the next 90 days, makes everything else matter less, and that thing gets the first block of the day? Not whatever's left over, because nothing is ever left over. The first. Before the messages, before the news, before other people's needs invade your morning. Because when you open the day with someone else's urgency, you hand over command and spend the rest of the day reacting. There's an image I like for this, a Roman road. They were absurdly straight. They cut through mountains, they crossed swamps, and they didn't bend for convenience. That's why many of them are still there, 2,000 years later. Meanwhile, a labyrinth can have 100 times more road built into it and lead absolutely nowhere. Have you been building a road or a labyrinth? Discipline 6. The discipline of the present. I want to tell you why you freeze, in the most physical terms possible. You don't freeze because of the task. You freeze because of the size of the frame you open in your head. When you think about writing the book, you don't see the next sentence. You see the whole book, plus the editing, plus the cover, plus other people's judgment, plus the possible failure. When you think about getting in shape, you don't see today's workout. You see 2 years of effort, diet, hard Sundays, all stacked into one unbearable block. And faced with that block, your body does the only sensible thing it knows how to do. It runs. You're not running from the task. You're running from a hallucination, from an entire future compressed into a single instant of right now. The Stoics had a very clear answer for this, and it shows up in several forms across the meditations. You don't live your whole life. You live this moment. No one can lose either the past or the future, for how can someone lose what he does not have? Marcus Aurelius kept insisting to himself, do what's in front of you with attention, seriousness, tenderness, and justice, as if it were the last thing you'll ever do, and free yourself from every distraction. You can live well if you can do this. Do well the thing that's in front of you now. That isn't a comforting phrase. It's an engineering instruction. Think of a Roman aqueduct. Those enormous arches, running for miles, crossing entire valleys, still standing today. If you showed the finished structure to a mason on day 1 and told him to build it, he'd put down his tools and walk away. It's too large for one life. But nobody builds an aqueduct. Someone sets a block, and then the next block, and then another. Each block is an ordinary task within reach of one man in one morning. The greatness of the aqueduct isn't in any block, it's in the repetition. Your job isn't the aqueduct. Your job is today's block. And there's a question that replaces every productivity system on earth, and I want you to keep it. What's the next stone? Not what do I need to do with my life? Not what do I need to do this year? What's the next physical, concrete, small action I can execute in the next 15 minutes? Open the document, put on the shoes, pick up the phone, write the subject line. That's not a motivation trick. That's shrinking the frame until fear no longer fits inside it. Fear needs a future in order to exist. In the next 15 minutes, there isn't enough future for it to move into. And something happens when you do this repeatedly. Something almost funny in how predictable it is. You start and you don't stop at 15 minutes. You almost never stop. Because resistance, as I said earlier, lives in the launch. Once the body is moving, the adversary loses the microphone. He's a magnificent debater with a man lying down. He's irrelevant to a man already working. There's an old image about water and stone. A single drop has no power at all. It falls on the rock and absolutely nothing happens. And if you filmed it for a year, you'd conclude the drop is losing. But spend a century there. The rock is hollowed out. And it wasn't the force of the drop. It was the fact that it never stopped falling. You wildly overestimate what you can do in one furious night, and you brutally underestimate what you can do with 40 minutes a day for 3 years. And the reason you prefer the furious night is simple. The furious night is exciting, and the drop is boring. But the lives of people who build something are made of well-managed boredom. There's no glamour inside it. There's a man repeating a small thing on an ordinary day, especially on the days he doesn't feel like it. Do today's block. Only today's block. And tomorrow, when the giant frame opens in your head again, and it will, close it and ask again, what's the next stone? Disciplining 7. The discipline of habit. Now, I need to tell you the most important thing Epictetus taught about this subject, and it may be the single most practical idea in all of Stoic philosophy. He told his students, every faculty, every capacity is fed and grows by the corresponding acts. The man who walks a lot becomes a good walker. The man who runs a lot becomes a good runner. And he keeps going without mercy. If you want to be a good reader, read. If you want to be a good writer, write. But go 30 days without reading, go do something else, and see what happens. And then comes the line that changes everything. In the same way, if you lie in bed for 10 days, then get up and try to take a long walk, and you'll see how weak your legs have become. He's saying something we'd rather not hear. You don't have good habits or bad habits sitting inertly inside you. You have a direction that is being fed right now. There is no neutrality. Every act you commit is a vote. You're always voting on who you're becoming. And the election happens every day. And abstaining is also a vote. Every day you postpone, you weren't standing still. You got stronger at postponing. You trained. You are an elite athlete in the sport of avoiding discomfort because you've been practicing it for years with exemplary consistency. That's why change feels so slow. It isn't a lack of strength. It's that there's an old training program on the other side. But the same law that condemns you is the one that saves you. And that's tonight's good news. If capacity grows from corresponding acts, then every new corresponding act is a vote for the other side. And the other side starts growing the same way this one did, by repetition, not by intensity. Epictetus also said, and this is the heart of it, don't feed the contrary habit. When you resist once, count that day. When you resist twice, count again. And when you pass 30 days, make a sacrifice to the god, because the habit has begun to weaken, and then it was destroyed. He's talking about counting. He's talking about a chain. And look how remarkable that is. 2,000 years before any habit app, any streak tracker, any modern system, a crippled former slave had already noticed that human beings respond to the chain. That we aren't moved by the logic of future benefit, but by the horror of breaking a sequence. So here's the simplest and most powerful structure I can hand you tonight. First, pick one thing. One. Ridiculously small. So small the adversary doesn't think it's worth arguing about. 10 minutes of reading. 5 push-ups. 1 written page. A 15-minute walk. The temptation will be to make it bigger. You look at 10 minutes and find it pathetic, and you'll want to make it an hour, because an hour matches the size of your ambition. Don't. Ambition is what brought you here, and look where you are. What you need isn't ambition. It's a track record of days kept. Second, keep it every day, especially on the bad days. And here's the real secret, the part almost nobody understands. Bad days are not interruptions of the training. Bad days are the training. Doing it when you're rested, healthy, and inspired builds nothing, because on that day you didn't need discipline, you had desire. It's on the day you slept badly, argued with someone, feel low and see no point in any of it. That's the day the thing is actually built. One bad day kept is worth a month of good ones. Third, and this is the rule that saves lives, never fail twice in a row. You will fail. There's no chain without a break, and anyone promising you a life without failure is selling you something. The problem was never the isolated failure. One missed day changes nothing about your life. What changes everything is what happens on the day after the failure, because that's where identity gets decided. If you fail on Tuesday and return on Wednesday, you're a disciplined person who had a bad day. If you fail on Tuesday and do nothing on Wednesday, you became a person who stopped. And by Thursday, it's not a discipline question anymore. It's a shame question. And shame is the adversary's favorite fuel. He never takes you down with the first fall. He takes you down by using the first fall as proof that it's pointless. So burn this in. You failed? Fine. Tomorrow isn't optional. And there's a side effect to this that may be the most valuable part of all. One the Stoics understood deeply. You don't build a habit to get a result. You build a habit to become a kind of person. The man who has run for 3 years isn't a man who runs. He's a runner. And a runner doesn't wake up deciding whether to run, the same way you don't wake up deciding whether to brush your teeth. The decision was made once, long ago, and the rest became who he is. That's what's on the other side of repetition. Not the body, not the money, not the finished project. It's the end of the daily negotiation. It's the peace of no longer having to argue with yourself every morning. Discipline isn't a life of permanent effort. Discipline is effort concentrated at the beginning to buy a life where most of the good things happen without a fight. Discipline 8. The discipline of the night judge. And now the last one, the one that teaches all the others together. Without it, the previous 7 burn out fast, because there's no correction without awareness. Seneca tells us, in a work on anger, that he learned from a teacher named Sextius, a practice he carried for the rest of his life. And he describes it with an intimacy that gives you chills. He says something like this: when the light has been taken away, and my wife, who knows this habit of mine, has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I did and said. I hide nothing from myself. I pass over nothing. Why should I fear any of my mistakes when I can say, see that you don't do it again, and this time I forgive you? Read that last part again. See that you don't do it again, and this time I forgive you. There's a balance in that line almost nobody achieves, and it's the difference between growing and destroying yourself. Because people do one of two things with their own day, and both are escapes. The first is not looking. Getting home, turning on the television, scrolling until sleep arrives, and never, at any point, facing head-on what was done and what was avoided. That's the common one. It's a daily anesthetic, and it guarantees that tomorrow will be an exact repetition of today, because nothing unexamined can be corrected. The second is looking with hatred. Lying down and running the whole day through your head like a merciless prosecutor. I'm a failure. I lost another day. I'll never change. What is wrong with me? That looks like responsibility. It can even look like high standards, but it isn't. It's another escape, because self-punishment burns exactly the energy that correction requires. And it's comfortable in the most perversive way. A man who punishes himself feels he has already paid, and a man who has already paid doesn't have to change. Seneca does a third thing. He examines like an honest judge, not like an enemy. He records the error, he names the error, he issues the instruction for the future, and he closes the case. No discount and no cruelty. That's a skill, and it can be trained. So here's the exercise, and it's the last one I'll ask of you tonight. Before sleep, with the lights out, you ask 3 questions. It takes 3 minutes. You don't have to write them down, though writing helps enormously in the beginning. First, what did I do well today? Always start there. Not out of cheap optimism, but because a judge who only sees crime is a bad judge. And because you need to learn to record your wins, since your natural tendency is to erase them. Second, Where did I give in today? Where did the adversary win? At what exact moment did I hear that reasonable little voice and agree with it? Be specific. It wasn't a bad day. It was a moment. You can almost always find the instant, and it's almost always early. Third, what's the one thing I won't repeat tomorrow? 1. You're not going to fix your entire life before falling asleep. One correction. And then, and this part is mandatory, you close it. You tell yourself, with the same ease as Seneca, next time, no. And tonight, you're forgiven. And you sleep. Because a man who examines his own day every night cannot stay lost for long. He might get it wrong on Monday, but by Tuesday, he already knows. He might drift, but not for 6 months, because someone is checking the course every night. And that's what separates people who grow from people who merely age. It isn't intelligence, it isn't luck. It's that some of them hold themselves to account, and the rest live on autopilot, waiting for something external to force them to change. Nothing external is coming to force you. It never does. You are the only authority left in your life. The 8 disciplines in one real day. I want to close tonight by showing you the 8 working together, because separately they're ideas and together they're alive. Picture an ordinary day, not a special one, not a day you woke up inspired, just a Tuesday, gray with a heavy week ahead of it. The alarm goes off at 5:30, and there he is, right on time, with the same argument as always. Not today. You slept badly, you've earned it. Make it up tomorrow. And you don't argue. You sit up, both feet on the cold floor. Discipline 1 done, and the whole day just changed owners. You get in the shower, and for the last 30 seconds, you turn the water cold. Your body screams. You stay. Discipline 3. And it isn't about the code. You already know that. It's the signing of a contract. Today I give the orders, and he obeys. Before you look at your phone, before you let other people's urgency invade your morning, you open the thing. The only thing that matters for the next 90 days. Discipline 5. And you don't open it to finish it. You open it for 15 minutes for the next stone. Discipline 6. And as always happens, the 15 becomes 50. And what comes out is bad. A crooked paragraph, a confused passage, a version you wouldn't show anyone. And you leave it bad and keep going. Discipline 4. Because the statue doesn't start with the face. At 11 in the morning, the task you've avoided for 7 months shows up in front of you. The phone call. And the adversary stands up again, wearing his best face. Now isn't a good time? You're in the middle of something. Do it tomorrow when you can give it your full attention. And you remember Epictetus. What day are you waiting for? And you pick up the phone and make the call. Discipline 2. It takes 4 minutes. 7 months of wait, 4 minutes of execution. At night, tired, you do the small thing. The 10 minutes of reading, the 5 push-ups, whatever you chose. Not because you feel like it. You don't. Because today is a day, and the chain doesn't break today. Discipline 7. And before sleep, lights out, 3 minutes. What I did well. Where I gave in. Because you gave in somewhere. You always do. And the one thing I won't repeat tomorrow. Discipline 8. Next time, no. And tonight you're forgiven. And then you sleep. And look at what happened in that day. Nothing. Absolutely nothing heroic. No one applauded. No life was transformed. If you describe that day to someone, they'd find it unremarkable. Now multiply it by 300. Multiply it by 300, and you don't have a day anymore. You have a different man. A man who gets up when he decides to get up. Who does what he agreed to do with himself. Who is no longer managed by his own comfort. Who carries inside him a record of kept promises so long that doubt about his own word has simply evaporated. And here's where I need to tell you the last thing. The most important one. So please don't fall asleep before this part. Discipline isn't about productivity. You're not doing this to produce more, to perform more, to be a better cog. That would be far too small a thing to give a life to. Discipline is about sovereignty. It's about being the owner of the house. It's about reaching the end of your life knowing that the decisions that brought you there were yours, and not the decisions of the part of you that only wanted to avoid pain. It's about not being led at 70 by choices that were never actually chosen, only conceded, one at a time, across thousands of mornings when you hit snooze. The Stoics said the only real freedom is internal. That a man can be chained, exiled, imprisoned, enslaved, and still be free, because his fortress sits somewhere no one else can reach. Epictetus lived that in his own body. But there's an opposite, and it's the most common condition of all. The man who has every external freedom in the world, who can do whatever he wants, who answers to no one, and who spends his entire life obeying every impulse that surfaces inside him. That man isn't free. He has an owner, and the owner wears his face. You don't need to become a machine. You don't need to wake at 4 a.m. and take ice baths and turn your life into an endless competition. That's a caricature, the same emptiness in different clothes. You need one thing, and it's simpler and harder than any routine. You need to become someone you trust again. And trust is built exactly one way in this entire universe, by doing what you said you'd do, once and then again, especially when you don't feel like it. Especially when no one is watching, and no one is ever watching, and that's exactly why it counts. So tonight doesn't end with a big promise. Big promises are the old addiction, and you've made plenty. It ends with something small. Choose one. One single action, small enough to be non-negotiable, and execute it tomorrow, at the time you set right now, before you sleep. It isn't the beginning of your new life. It's the first piece of evidence, the first stone in the wall. And if something here landed deep, write it in the comments. Not as a favor to this channel, but as a signal to yourself. Writing down what we decide changes the density of the decision. It leaves the fog and becomes a word. I no longer wait to feel ready. I do what must be done. Today. Write it. And tomorrow, when the alarm goes off and that reasonable voice starts negotiating with you, remember that you wrote it. You are not lazy. You never were. You just never realized you were in a war, and that your adversary is counting on one thing only, on you continuing to believe that he is you. He isn't. He's the part that wants to stop, and you're the part that decided tonight that it won't. Welcome to Shadow and Wisdom. Until the next video, walk in the shadow without fear.